When I was 13 years old, our family moved to a small town in Nebraska. And I remember my first day at the junior high school when I was in 8th grade. And we came to school and checked in at the office, and the school secretary brought me to my first class in the middle of the morning, which was band class. And so I appeared at the door, and everybody looked at me, and the band director stopped the rehearsal, and the secretary introduced me, and the band director found out what instrument I played and had me go sit with the other in the baritone section. I felt like the newest inmate in the prison. And for the next year, for the next 5 years, Mr. Kenneth Johnson was my band director. Every morning in junior high school and high school, my first period class was band. And in the fall, we had marching band practice that started at 7 o'clock in the morning at the fairgrounds. So I spent a lot of time with Mr. Johnson. At football games and basketball games, I played in the pep band. I was in the marching band. We marched at football games and in competitions. Mr. Johnson took us to band festivals in other towns. One year, just after my junior year, he took the whole band to Winnipeg, Canada, for several days to be in a music festival. So Mr. Johnson was a big part of my life. And what I remember about Mr. Johnson was that he was very demanding. He would say, "Baritones, where were you? You missed your cue. You must have been asleep." He never missed an opportunity to remind us. And when me and my friends were late for band practice, for marching band practice, he would get right on us. He'd say, "Fulton, where were you?" I said, "Well, we were on time, but there was a train crossing the railroad tracks and we couldn't help it. It wasn't our fault." He says, "Fulton, you have to learn to anticipate. Anticipate that train and be there early." He says, "You are the president of the band and you're supposed to set an example for everybody else." I'm embarrassed now to remember how my friends and I made fun of him. You know, he was a real kind of uptight kind of guy, and his face was kind of red. He had this vein that stuck out on his nose, a blue vein. And we always thought that when he got mad someday, he was just going to explode up there on the podium and have a heart attack. So we were all taking bets on when he would have his heart attack. But when I think back on it now, I realize that he's one of the most important influences in my life. He forced me to pay attention. He provided me with a discipline that stayed with me all my life. He pushed me to excel, and he brought out the best in me. He gave me appreciation for music and a discipline for music. So I guess you could say that Mr. Johnson was one of the saints in my life. A saint is someone who has been influential in your life. St. Paul calls the people in his churches saints. They were sanctified people set aside for the work of God. As the centuries went on, the martyrs, those who had been killed for their belief in Christ, were considered the most important saints. But the saints are all the people of God. A saint is really anyone who's made a positive difference in your life. Like Mr. Johnson made a big difference in my life. Well, today is All Saints' Day, when we remember those who've gone before us, those who have been saints in our life. Of course, we remember our parents and our families who have been saints for us. But today I'd like to think about other people, not our parents, but others who have been saints in our life, like Mr. Johnson was for me. And in a few minutes, I'd like to ask you to share maybe someone who is a saint in your life, not your parent, but another person. On All Saints' Day, we think back to those who made a difference in our lives, who've gone before us, and we give thanks to them. I'm at the point now when I look back and I realize all the influences in my life, all the things that formed me, the people and the circumstances and the places, I realize how that made me who I am today. And so I look back at those things with gratitude. I think of my scoutmasters, Mr. Porter and Mr. Roy and Mr. Lee. I think of my high school coaches, Mr. McNair and Mr. Callan and Mr. Stevens. I think of my elementary school teachers, Miss Davidson and Mrs. Piper and Mr. Boyd. All these people made a difference in my life. You think back on them and remember them. I can see their faces. And it's not just people that we have known personally. I mean, how many of us have been influenced by writers who've captured our imagination and led us to think about greater things than we would have thought ourselves? And how about musicians who wrote and played music that inspired us and helped us to see a vision of things that we hadn't seen before? And what about popular figures that have shown us things that we hadn't imagined before? All these people are our saints. I think back to the people who've gone before us, to the members of the greatest generation who lived through the Depression and fought World War II and came and rebuilt the economy. Think back to the settlers and the pioneers who came across the country and established towns and cities. Think back to the earliest migrants from Europe who came to America to settle our country. Those are all people who have formed us and shaped us. I'm not saying all these people were perfect. I know many wrongs were committed in the establishment of our country. But what I'm trying to say is that we didn't come out of nowhere. We've been preceded by generations and generations of people who have made us who we are, made our country what it is, and made our families and us as individuals who we are. In our New Testament lesson today, we heard the vision of John of Patmos. John of Patmos probably lived around the year 100 or 110, something like that. And he had been a prophet of some kind in the Christian church and had been a witness for Jesus, and he had been persecuted as a result and exiled to this island of Patmos where he was living in poverty. And he says that he was in the Spirit on the Lord's day when he had this vision of heaven that he wrote down. Now, this is very early in the life of the church, and they're still working out who Jesus is and what it means to be a Christian and what it means to die in the Spirit and be raised with Jesus. And so in his vision, he saw what it was like to be raised with Jesus. He saw the gates of heaven were open to him, and he saw into heaven. He saw God, the Lord, sitting on a throne. And Jesus, the Lamb, was there next to him. And around them were four living beings with eyes all around. And around them were 24 elders in a circle on their thrones. And every so often they would fall down before the throne of God and cast their crowns upon the ground and sing praises to God. And surrounding them were people in robes of white who represented the martyrs. And around them, there's this huge, huge crowd, thousands upon thousands, myriads upon myriads of angels, and all of them were singing to praise to God. Just an amazing vision that is just hard to even imagine. But he wrote this down in the Revelation of John. So John asked an angel who was there, "Who are these people in the white robes?" And the angel says that they are those who have died and gone before. They're people from every language and nation and people and tribe from all over. And they're the saints of God. That's where the vision ended. And John wrote down what he saw, and is preserved in the Revelation, the last book in the Bible. Well, that vision reminds us that we're not alone. Those we love and who have gone before us are in heaven with God. They are those in the white robes. And they're still with us. You know, our ancestors, our teachers, our coaches, our families, poets and musicians and philosophers, they're all still with us. They're part of our being, part of who we are. And we are part of a long line of saints who have gone before. And we too are the saints. So I wonder, who are your saints? Who are those who have made a big impact on you? Can you share someone who's made a big difference in your life? Not your parents, because that's too easy, but someone else. Anybody have somebody? Amy?
Sure. My best friend's mom welcomed me as a chubby 13-year-old into her home, and she was one of those Christians who just glowed. And I am forever grateful for her warmth and love.
Yeah, made a difference in a 13-year-old girl's life.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I have my Aunt Elizabeth.
Your aunt?
She was married to a colonel in the army. And whenever he came around, we always had to watch our cues, P's and Q's. Aunt Elizabeth was a character.
Oh!
and so I think that she embedded in me my life as in the military life. So I really appreciate her.
She was a model for you?
Oh, she was.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, good.
Dr. Jones. He was my advisor in college, as well as my genetics professor. And he also got me a little interested in marine biology.
Yeah. Good, important person.
When I got out of the service, I went back to college and got my bachelor's in sociology and social services. And I was working for an agency. And even though I was a counselor, I had to do the crisis calls at night, at a 24-hour hotline we had. And so the person that manned the phone during the day, her name was Gail. And she was my mom's age. But she really had issues about controlling of the phone. And so I would be at night, 10 o'clock, answering the crisis call saying, "Hi, can I help you?" And she would be on another phone calling in because she had a stipulation that you could, 3 minutes was the max before you had to answer the other phone line. You had to at least pick it up and say, "I'll be with you in just a moment," because they were crisis calls. And then the next day she'd come in and she'd say, "Okay, kid, you didn't do what you're supposed to be doing." I said, "Gail, I was trying, give me a break." She goes, "Nope, you gotta get better, you gotta get better. You're still a damn rookie." And, I worked with Gail for 10 years. She was amazing. She became my best friend.
Yeah.
She passed of cancer, but she was just this amazing, loving person that all she wanted to do was make sure that everybody that needed help got the help they needed in a timely manner.
Wow.
So she was amazing.
Yeah, sounds like it. Yeah. Good, thank you. Peggy?
It was my great aunt Jenny. She was this very jolly 4 foot by 4 foot Finnish woman. And I'd go to her house and there was always food everywhere. Everybody was welcome, everybody went to the table. And if you didn't eat anything, she would get upset. So I was like, yes, great Auntie Jack. She said, you're too skinny, you eat. Well, I think that's where I got my hospitality from.
Right.
Everybody welcomed.
You learned that from her. Yeah. Deborah.
I have two. I had Rachel, and if Jan were here today, she would know who I'm talking about. She was a family friend, and she was the piano teacher for this whole neighborhood. And I can say in all the years that I knew her, I never knew her once to be unkind. She always had a pot of coffee waiting for you. Yeah. And as I got older, I wasn't just going to see her with my parents. I would drop in on her, and there was always coffee to drink. Yeah. And it wasn't until I was in my 20s I realized she didn't drink coffee. But she just sort of expected that people were going to need to come and talk with her, And then later, she's still with us, I hope. I met this woman named Linda, who's more my age, in my 30s. And oddly enough, when I first met her, I did not like her. And that is really unusual for me. And the reason I didn't like her was I thought nobody could possibly really be that nice. But she is, and has remained so. She has scleroderma, which is like it ossifies the tissues in your body, so she really deals with a lot of health issues, but she always has a kind word for anybody. She can't get out as much as she used to be able to, but so I sort of figure she is my generation's Rachel.
Yeah. Wow, great, thank you.
And I often think, what would Rachel do, or what would Linda do?
Yeah, what would she do? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anybody else? Well, isn't it wonderful to think back on all these saints that are with us? I can see them surrounding us, and encouraging us, and teaching us, and prodding us. People who have shaped us, people who have been there for us. We all arrived here with all these influences that we bring with us that are still part of us. So we give thanks to God for them. Later in the service, at the end of the prayers of the people, Don is going to read the names of those who have died, and so we'll remember them. I'll add some prayers for them. And of course, we have some photographs and mementos at the back table of people who have gone before. And we can take some time in our hearts today to be thankful for the saints in our lives, saints that God has given us and made us who we are.